Okay, now for round 2, we're going to go ahead and actually pull off the valve covers and the front cover, thereby exposing the valve train components, and then we're going to talk about them a little bit and how they fail and what to look for once you're in there. Now, my suggestion is if you're in there this deep, is of course to buy a timing chain kit where we're changing everything out on here all new, and it'll be good for another 150,000 miles, including the oil pump, which, like I said, I did separately, but I do have a link to it down below for you guys to check that out. It only takes another 15 minutes, costs about $98, and it's a good investment to keep your system fully operational for many years to come. Now remember, for each one of the videos in this 4-part series, I'll put the links down below to the torque specs, the tools, and the parts you're going to need for each one of these videos on here, so you know what you need going into the next step on here to have on hand. Some of these tools are required, or else you're not going to go further into this procedure on here. So be sure to watch all 4 videos so you get a good sense of it, and to make sure you have everything on hand. Okay, let's get to it. Here is part 2 of the 4-part series on timing chain set replacement for the 5.4 liter 3-valve engine. Let's take a look. Okay, at this point, both valve covers are free and clear. Next, we're going to go ahead and take this trim panel off right here so we can get to the fan shroud and fan and rip them out of the vehicle and get them out of here. And then we can concentrate on getting all the accessory drive stuff off of the front cover so we can pull the front cover and the valve covers, and then there we go. So the way to do this is there's a bunch of these things called scrivets in here. There are screws / rivets. So it's best to use an impactor like this, drill bit driver and pull these out of here. Very gentle, because they're going to want to just spin in there. And the procedure for the F-150 is pretty close, You'll be able to tell what you need to take off on there. They use these things for everything. Now once the screw is out enough from the rivet itself, like this one right here, you simply get underneath it and pull it out, or you can get underneath the rivet itself and pull it out together, which I recommend, because then we're keeping all these pieces together. As you can see, they'll fly and you'll never see them again. So let's kind of get these off together and collect them and put them in one spot together so we have them all going back in. All this stuff I'm doing is stuff I've learned throughout the years. A lot of people come in here and they start ripping everything off the vehicle and just throwing it in a pile, and man, is it a pain afterwards going back together, I tell you what. So I've started, doing this many years ago, where I keep all the pieces together, even screws with their components like brackets and stuff like that. And you literally take the whole thing over there and just put it on the vehicle. It's so much easier. So we'll get this off of here. This will open it up big time for us after this. And this just simply comes up in the back and it slides over in the front there. Okay, with that trim piece off of there, you can see the fan shroud a bit better now. What we're going to do is we're going to unbolt the fan shroud from the radiator so it's sitting there flopping around, and then we can start concentrating on getting the fan out of there and taking them out together. Now, the way the fan shroud comes out on most of these is there's a 8 or 10 millimeter bolt right there. This one's 8, and then the bottom, it just kind of hooks into the radiator on there. So once you take that bolt out, this thing should start flopping around and come out pretty easy after that. Okay, so bear with me. The GoPro has died on me, so we're going to do it from a little bit further away until it comes back to life. So this is the procedure. Bolts out both sides. And notice it comes out of there pretty easy after that. Now on the F-150s and stuff like that, different model years, there might be hoses pushed into this to retain them, to hold them in place. But besides, you get that to that from the bottom side there. Besides that, like this one's really easy. There's nothing attached to this one. I think there's actually 2 pieces to it also. But we're gonna go ahead and pull this out with, back in its spot here. We're gonna pull this out with the fan, so let's get that broken free next. Okay, now there's one item you want to take off before pulling this fan shroud, and that's this hose support right here. It's a 13 millimeter, so we'll take that off and get that out of our hair. Now what I use to separate the fan from the water pump on there is a pneumatic fan clutch wrench set from Lisle. And this has a 36 millimeter nut size on there, and this thing works absolutely great. You're going to wish you had one of these if you don't own one of these already. On this one, it's not so bad. It's pretty out there in the open, but if you don't have something like this, you're going to need to get the appropriate size wrench on there and hold this pulley at the same time. Usually I put the wrench on there, okay, and then you knock the wrench with like a 3-pound sledge and kind of shock it loose. Now there's no note about being a left-hand thread, so it should be righty-tighty and lefty-loosey. There we go. Now once it's loose, it should just literally spin in there, like so. There should be no corrosion in there. Hopefully no one used Loctite in there. And the thread on here is probably an inch of length is the stuff that sticks out of there, so be ready. Kind of take this off and grab it before it falls too far down. Now at this point, get the shroud up high enough, get the fan out of here so you don't damage any fins. We can come back for the shroud, I'm telling you. That's the absolute best way to do it without damaging anything. Because sometimes these fan shrouds like to get caught on everything. Everything and anything, and they need special attention just to get them out of here. This one's not so bad. Okay, here we go. We're going to pull off the front end accessory drive components like the pulleys and the tensioners and stuff like that. We're going to leave the alternator on. It's not in the way, so don't worry about that. First thing we're going to do is pull the belt off, get it out of here before anything happens to it. Pull it off of here. I'll have the belt routing down below, a picture of it, but you might want to take a picture of yours. They're all pretty much the same. All right, let's start taking off the water pump pulleys, bolts, and for something like this, you're going to want to impact. You can see how easy they're coming off of there. Now some of these, they get stuck on here right around the hub in the middle. Give it a little tap. And they should start coming off of there. Some of these can be a bigger pain than others. The reason why I'm using a metal hammer on here instead of a rubber mallet, we're trying to shock it. You can also, spray its area. Try to get it loosened up. In the meantime, we can start taking off all these pulleys on here. Now these are 13 millimeter bolts. Some of these are 15. And again, keep the bolt and the pulley together. just in case they're different lengths, like this one down here. Okay, now as far as the tensioner goes, you really can't see it too well, but there's 3 10mm bolts that bolt it to the front cover on here. Let's get in there. Okay, anything in here that has studs on it, like this stud right here, and then one right there, you're going to hit them with some rust penetrant. It makes the whole job that much easier. I'll let those start soaking. Including this one, which we need to take off yet for our interference capacitor. Alright, let's get this capacitor loosened up. Alright. Pull that off. And again, keep the capacitor and connector with the harness. What you're going to want to do is follow this down. It goes down to the AC compressor, and I think, almost positive, it goes down to the crank sensor also. It's a good idea to go down there and disconnect it from those and get this out of the way, because it is in the way of the front cover on here. Okay, let's go back to our water pump over here and try to dislodge this. It's starting to come, it's getting quieter. Okay, at this point it's moving, and we can start taking it off. Now what I use for this, just to help it go the right direction, is a pry bar. And you're not pulling on it that much, and you're going to pull on it evenly. I mean, I got finger pressure on here. It's just the hub on there is very exact, and now it has corrosion in there. So this is the way to get it off without damaging anything. Go. Okay, let's get these 2 nuts right here off. They're 15mm. Nice. Okay, since we're down here, let's go ahead and take the crank bolt out. It's 18mm. One note here, you see a big fat washer on here? Make sure you put that back on going back in. It's very, very important. Keep these 2 together. Okay, now you see this bracket right here? This is holding the trans cooler lines. That supports them. So it's kind of popping off there pretty much. Let it fall, whatever. And that's free. Okay, now for the crank pulley removal. What I use is a gear puller like this, made for steering wheels, stuff like that. Kind of just line it up in here, and I think I usually just get 3 of these on here. 2 or 3. I think this one's gonna match all 3. So what I do is I use the big nose cone on there, as you probably just saw, and then these are standard size bolts, and they fit in there just fine. They all came in the kit. And I put a little bit of anti-seize on the tip of them so they have a little bit of lubrication going in. These threads generally are okay, but they get a little rusty over the years. So I just snug these down a little bit, try to keep them even. I kind of go till they start hitting the same point on there, when they start giving me an issue. generally you only need a couple threads. Okay. And then we have the big nose cone on there already. So we'll go ahead and we'll tighten it by hand so it's straight. And at this point you can use an impact or even a hand wrench and it'll pull it right off of there. These aren't, you know, pressed on too bad. Alright, let's try this stubby impact. Perfect. So much easier. Okay, since it was hard to get in there, I'm going to show you exactly how I have this bolted onto here. So basically I have a bolt in each one of the spokes on the crankshaft pulley, okay? And then I used a large nose cone on there that sticks into the end of the puller on there. That fits perfectly in the crankshaft without damaging anything. And you can see all these bolts, they get to that certain point on there and they kind of start binding up. You just stop right there. It's plenty of threads and they're all pretty even at that point too. Just the way it is on these crankshaft pulleys. I don't think it's like a casting, like flashing back there. You know, the pieces that didn't get threaded all the way. And it starts binding on it, and they'll be all pretty even, so you can just zip, pull it out. Okay, it's finally time to pull the valve covers off. Now the procedure is the same for both sides. We're basically going to pull out all the 8mm bolts that are all around it, holding it to the head. Now before you do that, you want to make sure you clean the area with some compressed air, get all that packed on dirt off of there. One note on this, if you have a mid-year 07, which is an 08 model year and newer, you're gonna have like 8 bolts and this thing's gonna come right off of here, whereas this is an 05, so we have like 14 or 15 bolts in the darn valve cover, so they're kind of buried back there, but they're not too bad to get to. We got everything out of the way. I'm gonna try this sucker out. Oh, nice. Now it's a good idea to jump around top and bottom, okay, and kind of take it off evenly the best you can. Okay, all the bolts are loosened from the valve cover, so we're ready to take it off, but first, one last cleaning. Now these bolts generally can stay in here. They're a captured design. They can kind of come out. It takes a little bit though. Generally they'll stay in there. At this point there's a bead of silicone right here and right here. So we just need to get underneath right here, okay, and kind of pick up on it like that. And it shouldn't take too much to separate it there. Now once it is separated, there's the VCT solenoid and the seal right here, so you want to come directly up. So pick up the back from one of the studs back here, and you can start getting it loose on here. Now some of these are bound to stick in there. Like so. There we go. This one back here is not all the way out. Oh, it's the very back one. Okay, then what you're gonna do is pick it straight up. We're gonna get the back up and just keep going higher and higher and higher, and then we can start coming forward. Okay, this is the way it usually comes off. The valve cover comes out just fine and leaves the gasket behind. The problem with that is, you see all this caked on mud right here? When we pull this up, it's just gonna break away from it and leave it all in the engine here. So either have a vacuum ready, or what I do is before that ever happens, we'll go ahead and we'll stuff a rag in here and try to keep as much of it out as possible. When you're working on these high mileage engines like this and stuff like that, and the truck's actually used as a truck, it's gonna have this mud in here. There's nothing you really can do about it besides be as clean as possible. Now down there and up here, not really an issue. It's just right here. So let's try to be clean about it and prevent grit from entering the engine. Okay, something like that. Now you can start taking it off down here. This one's, oh God, this one's definitely original. Okay, down here, 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 and then you can start taking it off of here. Okay, now at this point, best thing to do, we have this protected, right? Is get a small shop vac nozzle and you run it across here, okay? And you kind of scrape this off while you vacuum it straight up and out of there. Okay, so this is what a 170,000 mile 543 valve looks like. It looks like a lot of it is originally sealed varnish on here. This is almost normal varnish though for 170,000 miles. I wouldn't say use the best oil and was too consistent, but it's not the worst that I've seen. And you can see the wear on the cam lobes. It's not that bad. They're nice and shiny. I don't see no big scrapes or gouges in them. I gotta do a good thorough inspection. But at this point, the engine's been off for a while. What you want to do is come over to these lash adjusters and push down on them, okay, and feel the roller followers, okay, and see if they're really loose or not, and that'll help you identify lash adjusters that are bleeding down overnight before we ever take them off of there. They're generally not that big of an issue. All right, that's it for the left-hand side. Repeat the same thing for the right-hand side. And then I'll come back and we'll pull the front cover together. Now, one of the last things we have to do before pulling the front cover off, unfortunately, is pull the power steering pump on here. Now, there's only 3 10mm bolts. There's one here, and there's one here, and there's one on this side, but down. And you'll feel it back there. That's a stud you took off the oil pressure sensor harness off of. Now, these are real pain to get to. This whole thing right here with the ABS is in the way big time on the Expeditions, whereas it's further up on the F-150, a little more room in the engine compartment. Your best friend is going to be a 10mm flex head gear wrench, and I'll show you why. You can basically get in here and get on them, hold it like this with your finger, and then start wrenching them off. You get your hand over here and have plenty of room to do it. Now, that one, you can easily get a box end wrench on there with the angle and break it with a hammer and the box end, okay? And that'll shock it loose. Whereas this front one, it's impossible. There's a pulley right here. Well, not so. Be a little smarter than the car. Look at that. So what you can do, just to get it loose, is to put this through there. There's plenty of room. I don't go down yet. Put your finger on here to hold it, and then we'll and that'll loosen it. And this one's nice and dry, so you probably do it a couple of times on here, depending if you can get it on here again or not. But that's the general idea. At this point, let's go ahead and try with the gear wrench in this tight little area here. Oh yeah, easily do it. What works real well once the torque is broken is something like this. There we go.
flex head 1/4 inch. You get a bigger swing that way. Alright, so get these loosened, but leave them in. This front one can come all the way out. And then we'll work on that back lower one and get it all the way out before pulling these out. Suckers are long-winded. Okay, now this lower back one, you're going to want to use a flex head, preferably 1/4 inch, and your 10 mil deep well 6-point. Come in through here, the back side here, and feel around for it. You feel the stud sticking out. Get around there. Okay, reach around with your other hand here, and hold the whole shebang onto there. This one, because it's below the power steering pulley, there's actually quite a bit of swing here, so you can get your hand on here and do the initial braking of torque. So this one's right loose. I'll go ahead and pull this one out. And once it's out and we're clear, we can come back up here and finish taking this one out. And this whole pump will swing off to the side. That's all it has to do. Just falls to the side. And then we're going to follow the line over to where it sticks into the front cover, and we'll be able to loosen it at that point. I'll show that in a second here. This stud actually has some oil on it, so it came out a little easier. I'll show you how it looks. Big sucker. Now it's going to stick into the front cover a little bit while you're taking this bolt out, so that's kind of nice. It has these little alignment tabs on there. Not tabs, but alignment dowels. There we go. And they get a little corroded in there, so of course they stick. So we'll go get this thing out by hand. See, everything's dry and sticking together on these things. That's the bad thing about working on older cars, higher mileage. Work is work, though. Work is work. Okay. And this thing's just making it. Okay, now let's grab the thing, and it should break free. There we go. Now what I do, once it's broken free, flip it to the side like that. Like that. Once we get our line off here, and I lay it like that, and it's out of the way then. Okay, here's the pressure line coming up and over to the power steering pump, and that's in the way down here also of our front cover removal. So we'll just pull it out, okay, until this whole thing clears. Then I take this and I spin it out of the way like that. And the rest of this can kind of, like I said, go back over here and be pushed out of the way. There we go. Okay, down here on the bottom right of the front cover is the AC compressor right here, and next to it is the crank sensor. You want to disconnect the electrical connector before you forget. We're going to pull off the crank sensor and the front cover together. So let's disconnect this now so we don't damage it. You simply push in on this tang right here, and then you push up on the sensor. You'll hear it click, and then it'll come off of here. Make sure you hear that before you start taking it off, because these have a tendency to be a real pain coming off of here. The seal inside there dries out, and you gotta really help it out. See, like right now, we are fully disconnected from it as far as the clip goes, but between the dirt and that seal in there, it's stuck. So you got it out without damage. Okay, since we're down here ready for this connector, let's go ahead and pull off these 13mm pan bolts that go into the front cover on here. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4, And I tell you what, the best thing to use on it is a 13mm gear wrench, either flex head or not. You know, flex head gives you a little more leverage. And we'll pull those off and put those to the side. Everything else for the front cover, you know, all the rest of these bolts we're going to take out and stuff can all be done from the top side. Okay, we're finally ready to go ahead and start pulling off the front cover on here. Now, what I advise you to do, because there are about 3 or 4 different bolts in here, is to go around with your video camera, okay, and show each one of them the way it is right now, or take a picture somehow. Do something so that you put them back in the same exact spots and it goes back together that much faster. When we're putting this back in, there's going to be sealant and stuff like that in a few spots, and you want to tighten it up within a certain period of time so you want to have the right bolts on hand, ready to go and know where they go. I'll give you a quick tour of mine real quick. You can kind of reference it. Get up in here. So we'll start off on the right hand head. There's the first one. It's a regular stud. Come down, regular 13 mil. Those are all the same, the 13 mils are. Keep going along, another 13 mil. Then we come down to these big studs, which are always in the bottom, no sweat. Okay. And then we keep going up, another regular 13 mil. A regular 13 mil. The weirdo cap head screw. That one's like a 17 mil. It's an oddball, it's over there. That one is a regular stud up there. You follow it down, another 13 mil, and the rest of these down and through are regular 13 mils that are all the same size and length and all that. Come on up to the other side, and we end with the stud, which is the same exact stud as this side right here. So let's go ahead and start ripping these things off of here. Okay, just like that, everything should be gone on here now. One last check before you start prying this sucker off of here. Make sure no hidden bolts got missed. Okay, now what I generally do is use a smaller pry bar. There's a little ear right here. And you can get behind here and start prying it off. Now it's going to stick on there, so just work it off on both sides the best you can. Pull a little bit. Like so. You're breaking the sealant that's, you know, it's all over in there. And you want to kind of just pry from that ear on there so you don't mar up the sealing surface. After that, you should be able to just, you know, kind of shake it a little bit here and there and get this thing off of here. I think our power steering line's in the way. Down here. Work it past it there. Ooh, here we go. Okay, this one's really bad. Now, what you gotta realize in this engine is if you start turning the crankshaft down there and you start aligning stuff up and you start moving it around, you're gonna lose your tension on your chains and it's gonna appear they're sloppy and they need to be replaced and all kinds of good stuff like that. You think all kinds of components are worn out. Now, that's the case if you turn it. I did not turn the crankshaft at all on this engine. So look at the driver's side here. Nice, good tension, all that good stuff, all this good stuff, all that. Comparison over here. Wow. Now, like I said, if you start turning, you know, the engine, the crank down there, what you'll do is you'll tension one side and the other side will be loose. Not this bad, but it'll be loose. I did not touch it. And this is how bad it is. And this is the noise you're hearing upon startup. The tension on this side is obviously faulty and it's let its guard down. Okay. And this side is hitting real fast when you start it up until that tensioner pumps up and pulls the chain tension over. Wow. That's definitely one of the worst ones I've ever seen. Look, that's almost touching in the middle there. Yikes. Well, it just goes to show this kind of mileage, you need to be looking at changing this stuff out before damage occurs. What I've seen before, and I'll pull it off on here. Let me show you this right here. This tone trigger wheel comes off and goes on a certain way. Let's make a note of this now. What you'll notice on there, where is it at? Right there. It says front right there. Make sure it's facing the front and it's not going on backwards. Going back together. I'll go over all that stuff, but what I've had before is, what was it? It was this chain gets sloppy like this one on another engine, and it was so sloppy it started wearing into the pump right here, and it wore it out. So that's definitely a good reason to change all this out of here, because it's just going to start damaging other components on here. Now what you're looking for is your tensioner to stick way out like that. You see that? It's sticking way out and into the tensioner arm on there. Okay? In comparison, here's one that's bled down. Okay? So it's very obvious. And this one, the seal on the backside is probably fine, whereas this one is definitely blown out. And that's where you get your startup rattle from.